Good morning, sunshine.
Welcome to the real world. Whoa! Mortgage your house and buy Bitcoin with free air. There's no second best, okay?
GM. GM. Today is Thursday. And it is Thursday, the 5th of September. Let's look at daily levels. No, not daily levels. We already did that one. Fucking trade of the day. So, what's going on here? We are seeing classic mean reversion. Where are my old squiggles? Here's some of the levels we looked at before. We had the pivot above, of course, which price failed to reach. Well, it did. It actually tested it. Let me just get that off. Sorry, wrong one. Pivot there. We tested it and then rejected off. And those couple levels but above that aren't needed. We then had this low, which swept below. That's another resistance point on the way up. We then had this low, which it's kind of holding, but I get the sense that this is more likely to do a sideways correction, just maybe fill in some of that recent gap, and then we continue further down. We have the weekly market structure level, which is currently holding. We did touch that, and that is holding right now. What is that level, you ask? It's this here. You go to a line chart on the weekly. It's this level here. Now, if we closed here, that would be an early break, where you see a low into a high. If this is going to be a higher low, we need that level to not break. If it closes here, sorry, it already has broken there because we had the close here. So that first part is broken, and this is like real cope levels of like people trying to hang on to weekly bull market structure, and you're having to go to these extents. This is proper cope. It's like bull cope. Like this is so far from being bullish that you're like begging and hoping that this just ends up being a full retracement of weekly market structure, and hopefully it can hold and go to a new high. Honestly, I think it would be better to just go lower, put in a clean new low, build a structure, and then go higher from there. But also, the market doesn't do what you want it to do. The market does whatever the fuck the market's going to do. So as I look at that, and we look at some of these levels below, it also could just be compressing on this moving average for another few weeks, and then fucking we moon. By the way, the longer it takes compressing, the less likely it is to do any kind of retest on the way up, right? If it falls into a compression and just go sideways, let's just say it goes sideways between fucking 55 and 60 until the election, just death chop. It's either whichever way it goes, it's probably just going to moon, right? That's a deep compression leads to a rally with no pullback. It's actually like, this isn't what I was going to do on Trade of the Day, but this is something that's a clear observation of mine that I think people should be aware of. The market doesn't, the more efficient Bitcoin becomes, the less efficient the trends become. This is something kind of counterintuitive I've been thinking about. So, you think that when a market gets bigger and more established and more efficient, in air quotes, that the trends and the ranges should be cleaner. One thing that's really true of Bitcoin is that it's extremely efficient at the moment in mean reversion, which is like sick. If you're a trader, it's so good. What that means is every time it breaks down, it comes back for a full retest. Breaks down here, comes back for a full retest. Even though this is not trending, this is bearish, every time it leaves a gap, the gap gets filled. Leaves the gap here, gap gets filled all the way up, right up to that area. Breaks down, comes all the way back up to this breakdown point, tests that. It's leave behind this gap here, that'll probably fucking fail. It's just really nice if you're a mean reversion trader, because your targets are clear and the targets are getting hit pretty well. The difference now, though, to previously, is that in this environment, the trends are kind of a lockout, a shutout, meaning, anyone waiting for a classic, breakout, right, okay, let's buy the retest of the resistance, doesn't happen. Well, let's, wait for a nice market structure to level to occur, and then let's buy a retest of that. Doesn't really happen. Then it trends up, and it trends up here, and you're like, okay, it trends, consolidates, but no opportunity for anybody to get on unless they're happy to buy these tiny pullbacks, which we were buying. They were G. But it's not classic, like what you think of trend. If you think of a trend like that, first of all, nothing actually trends like that. Go and find a chart that actually trends like that on higher time frame. It doesn't. That's not how it goes, right? So that's one of the things as well. That's how you understand a trend, because you have to understand higher highs and higher lows. But this whole thing about, and it's most commonly, it occurs like this. You see it move up, like Bitcoin breaks out. You see it go like this. You're like, okay, I'll wait for a higher low. That is the higher low quite often. Whereas at that point, you're like waiting for this. You're waiting for more classic sort of pullback, proper higher low. It's just not going to give you those entries. And then because of that, this is what's important to understand. Because of that, you have a shutout rally. You have a shallow pullback. You have a shutout rally, shutout rally, shutout rally. And then everyone piles in, gets too long, and then it just comes back and back and back and back and does fill in all that. And then we go again. Right? So the trends themselves, by their nature, like this part here, the last lockout part of the trend, no pullbacks, no pullbacks, no pullbacks, one flush, but it go, 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 go. And what does it do? It spends 6 months filling that back in. Right? And that's also part of the reason why this could fill in. If we start to break lower, this could fill in because, again, it was a shutout rally, no pullbacks, and it might need to get retested. The only good thing is that was before the breakout. So we had consolidation, then a breakout. We've had a retest. So all that is fine. It doesn't need to go there from a price action perspective. It can absolutely just stay in this wide range here and then continue higher. But I digress. So let me go over here and we'll look at Bitcoin. What you want to see is you want to see a change of character. What did I say on daily levels? On daily levels I was talking about this, how the breakdown doesn't quite get retested. This breakdown, come on. That's better. This breakdown doesn't get retested. This breakdown doesn't get retested, at least yet. And that's what you're looking at. So whether you're trading it short or not, which you don't have to, you want to watch and see when does this shift. Currently, it's breaking down, and the second breakdown can get filled, right? Like this is the best example here. Breaks down, then we have another breakdown. That one gets filled, but the first one doesn't. Then we have a breakdown and a breakdown. This one gets filled, and the first one doesn't. What have we then had overnight? We've had a breakdown, sort of, I would say maybe 2 breakdowns there. If I get this fucking level like that. And of course we had this breakdown just, fucking couple hours ago. There, but that's already filled. So if we go to a lower time frame and look at this, you've had that part fill. So if it's going to stay with the same downtrending type of structure, you would expect probably the price is unable to fill in that gap and then it rolls over. That's if the immediate kind of trend we've seen of gaps not fully filling to the upside holds. And why does that happen? Generally the presence of strong selling. And it's usually one of those things where it goes lower and lower and lower and lower, and then we find out later who was selling and why, right? You're like, well, it's just going to bounce a bit more, it's going to bounce a bit more, it needs to fill these gaps, it needs to touch this order block. It doesn't have to do any of that. Remember over here, it was doing the same thing. Over here, it's doing the same thing. The German government was selling. There was just heavy selling, and it left a gap, and it left a gap, and the gap couldn't fully fill, right? What have I talked about? Gaps down. Gaps down. That one fills. The second one, the first one, the second one fills. This one, the first one doesn't. See that? Again, gaps down, doesn't fill. Gaps down, isn't able to fill. Gaps down, isn't able to fill. This is obviously like much weaker than what we've just seen. The whole point being, we do come back to fill a bunch of that, but not until we've had quite a significant downtrend, and then we come all the way back up and we refill some of that there. Now, if we zoom out, because the nature of markets themselves is that they are fractal, this is one of the bear cases for Bitcoin, is that we have been breakdown and fully filling these gaps, and breakdown and pretty much fully filling the gap. Then we have a breakdown and we don't. This is definitely, you can just see it. This is definitely the weakest bounce we've had of all, after doing the biggest liquidation. That's important. We had the biggest shakeout, followed by the weakest bounce. That's interesting. Now, maybe we're just trying to hold on here and build a base, and then we fucking moon. But that's why it's so critically important that this level holds. If we start to go back below 54, 53, then it seems like at least the wick is being revisited, if not even lower. So anyway, Zooming in today. The data that comes today, I don't know if it's going to be that important. Advanced non-farm payroll, but you know the drill. I'll trade that around the data release time and around New York Open if the opportunity presents. You kind of have this clustering effect at the moment where people know that it's just better to wait for the data and wait for New York Open. So a lot of times not much happens between now and 1:30 UTC or 12:30 whenever the news is, depending on when the news comes. So that's probably when I'll trade, and I'll be in the chats. Let you know if there's any trades. GM.